how do companies that use Ignition access their data? So very wide open-ended question. There are several different ways, and really the sky's the limit. You can do it in a lot of different ways, but the question is, how do companies that are doing it today, not how can you do it, but how are companies doing it? And I'd say probably the most common ways are either with Ignition itself. So if you have perspective, you can open Ignition inside a web browser. You can pull up charts and graphs and visuals if somebody's designed those, and that's really common, that you just have an ad hoc chart or the perspective chart, power chart that might be on a screen that people can just use and select tags and drag those out and see what's there. It's also pretty common that for specific industries, folks are going to be doing things like water reports, or they might be doing power reports, power consumption, manufacturing reports, all of those with either our reporting module or just on-screen reports, which doesn't require the reporting module. That can just be done with Vision or with Perspective. So that's probably the most common way to do it. However, a lot of folks need to integrate with that data from outside systems. And so there are a few common ways to do that. Specifically, one of them, through transaction groups, it's pretty easy to put data into database tables that are easily accessible from outside systems that are connecting up to the database. And so if you're connecting up to Power BI, for example, and you want to pull in information from Ignition, or if you're connecting from data lake that's running inside Azure in the cloud, or one of 100 different areas, querying database tables is normally relatively easy to do from outside systems. And so those transaction groups can put the data into a format that you want to put it in the database. We do have some folks who query the tag historian tables directly. If you're doing that, you need to put it in a format that is going to be easily queryable from the outside. So you might not necessarily want compression on those tags, or you might want to bypass our compression algorithm. But it's actually more common these days for folks, if they want to access that historical data, especially from other software systems, to do it over web services. So RESTful web services can easily wrap the functions that do the tag querying, and you can pull back aggregate information. You can pull back certain number of points, certain number of items. You can pick your aggregation mode. And so then that's the web dev module generally that's done with that, or the Cepasoft web services module. Either one's fine. And then that wraps the function that we have behind the scenes. We have the system.tag.query tag history that goes and has all of those options. And so basically that just becomes a point of entry into that. And so there are a lot of systems that support web services that you host that endpoint inside Ignition, and then it makes all of that data accessible from the outside. Now, those are just a few examples of how folks are doing it today. There's with Ignition, if you know Ignition, there's pretty much the sky's the limit in terms of how you want to actually expose things or do things, or what you want to integrate with, the libraries that you want to use, the protocols that you want to use. And so we have a lot of folks who are doing things in different ways than the ones I just described. Some folks are doing stored procedures and database APIs. Other folks are integrating with external APIs and sending information back and forth. And that's growing in popularity too. So there are a lot of options there.